Indeed, a lot of people that just finished their studies imagine that we sit all day and we read papers and we develop algorithms and we talk about science. And in practice, data science is a lot about the business, meaning we're getting paid to create models that make real impact on the companies we work at.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. In this episode, we're going to unfold the role of the data scientist. Meet Aviv Ben Arie, staff data scientist at Intuit, previously a lead data scientist at PayPal. She specializes in fraud prevention and cybersecurity, and in the past worked at the Prime Minister's office in the cybersecurity field, focusing on protocol analysis. Aviv graduated from Tel Aviv University with a double BSc in computer science and life science, while specializing in bioinformatics. Aviv Ben Arie, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, all the way from the Intuit offices at Petach Tikva. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Thank you very, very much for joining me. Aviv, your journey as a data scientist across multiple organizations, including lead data scientist within PayPal, now staff data scientist at Intuit. I'm looking forward to talking with you about data science as an industry, as a vertical, as a new type of occupation that didn't necessarily exist before. And I'd love to start with a little bit about your journey and where you're coming from and how you even got introduced to data science, and then we'll dig deep into what data science is and all that fun stuff.
Great. So actually, I began my journey more in the cybersecurity space, not as a data scientist. Before data science was a very widespread occupation. In the Army, I was in a very large technological unit, which is focused on cybersecurity, and I worked at the Israel Prime Minister office. And while working there, I studied computer science, and I fell in love with algorithms, research, and data science. And from there, I learned that I can actually combine my two passions and work in the cybersecurity and fraud domain while being a data scientist. So this is how I got to my first data science position at PayPal around 5.5 years ago. And from there, I began my journey in the industry. I'm still working in the fraud domain, which I absolutely love. And I'm really happy to combine both data science and this fascinating domain.
And so when we say the word data scientist, what does that actually mean to you?
So a data scientist in the industry is maybe different from what people imagine in academia. For example, people that are researching and creating new machine learning algorithms. In the industry, a data scientist would spend most of his time working on a specific business problem and deriving a machine learning solution that can somehow have a good business impact on that problem. For example, I work in the fraud prevention domain. I receive specific tasks from my business partners to prevent fraud at Intuit or PayPal. And I'm in charge of understanding which data I can utilize and how to leverage my vast knowledge of algorithms and machine learning to create a model that ends up in production, meaning my models work in real time every time you hit login in PayPal or send a transaction. And these models specifically prevent fraud, and this can be applied to any domain.
And so when you're talking about, models and predictive models, and, obviously we have anomaly detection and a lot of these, ways in which data science and machine learning can be used within organizations. Historically, what are we seeing? So how is the trend come about to data science, let's say in the last 10 or 15 years?
So I would like to share my personal experience. I started looking for my first data science job around 6-7 years ago, and there were almost zero such positions in Israel. And Tel Aviv is a great high-tech hub. Yes, there were technical analyst jobs and things that were like in the direction, but only around, I would say, 4 to 5 years ago, it began to be a position that every company wants to open and hire great data scientists. So I would say that 10 years ago, this wasn't really common practice in the industry. And I feel that the trend is now that every company, even small startups, now have some data science team or even a group. and it's something that really became a commodity. Everyone wants to use AI. And actually, as a data scientist, I would say that my job gets a bit easier on the technical aspects. There's a lot of tools that when I began working didn't even exist. A lot of the more advanced machine learning packages, for example, TensorFlow or Keras, didn't even exist when I started working, which is just goes to show you how fast this field advances. So things have gotten easier maybe on the technical side and more advanced. Now we use platforms, for example, AWS and GCP and cloud computing. In the past, training very heavy models was a very difficult task that only very wealthy companies were able to pay for. And also, I would say that people are looking to study this field more and more. In the past, the field was much less competitive than it is today. I interview new hires for Intuit, and we have so many applications for every open position. So I would definitely say this is I would say, I think it's still very trending. I don't see any decline in the number of open positions or in the number of candidates that we have. Also, universities started opening master degrees in data science specifically, where in the past it was just like one subdomain within the computer science master's degree. Now there's full trainings that are focused on training the best data scientists for the future.
So this trend, so I understand that there's this great trend that we're seeing in terms of, the organizations, and understanding that we have a lot of these new technologies that are enablers for people to become better data scientists. What are we seeing a similar trend also in terms of the people that are entering the workforce that may have to upskill in order to be data scientists, or perhaps are looking, at what to study now?
So definitely. As one of my volunteering side jobs, I would say, I mentor female data scientists that are looking for their next job through an Israeli community called Extend Baot. And I'm very aware of the changes in the workforce as part of this mentoring program, because I constantly I'm in touch with people looking for their next job, not only while I'm searching for the next position. And I can definitely say that things are getting much more difficult for the candidates. If in the past it was enough to have a bachelor's degree in computer science and maybe some additional training, today, without a master's degree and a thesis in the very specific field of machine learning, for example, NLP or computer vision, it's very difficult to obtain the first job. And in general, people are looking also for experience, not only for theoretical knowledge. So I would say that the barriers are getting much higher. It's getting more and more difficult to enter the field. But also, I think that there's a lot more trainings available. There's courses, for example, ITC and Y Data. There's master's degree in the Technion in Tel Aviv University.
Right.
So it's easier to obtain the knowledge. Like when I studied, it was very difficult to find the relevant courses and projects to really gain more knowledge. And today I feel that it's becoming more easier to find the training, to take it, and then finding the actual job after may be a bit challenging. And my best advice is to gain real work experience, even if it's just volunteer work or an open source project, but have something you can show in the interviews to prove that you really know how to apply the knowledge to real world problems.
And so, what is paint me a picture of the day-to-day of a data scientist, because I think that's also something that is pretty interesting and could be a little bit different than what people may imagine. Well, what does the traditional day of a data scientist look?
Great question. So indeed, a lot of people that just finished their studies imagine that we sit all day and we read papers and we develop algorithms and we talk about science. And in practice, data science is a lot about the business, meaning we're getting paid to create models that make real impact on the companies we work at. So a lot of my day goes into meetings with different stakeholders, with my development team, with my business analysts. Some companies have maybe QA teams, and really aligning, connecting all the dots to make sure that the models I'm training are going to solve the business problem in hand. If I create an amazing model in terms of machine learning, but at the end the business KPIs don't go up or down as expected, I didn't really do my job. Meaning, the end goal of my model is always to push some business KPI, and not just to make an amazing machine learning model. So we have a lot of meetings, a lot of alignment. Of course, we do have a lot of, I would say around half of my time goes into reading papers and actually writing code, training the models, fine-tuning them, writing production code, deploying to production. This is also something that has changed throughout the years. Now data scientists are expected to be really well-rounded and be very fluent in coding, deploying to production, really own the entire pipeline, not just know how to take care of the machine learning part. So basically our work is end to end. I work with the business, I gather the data, I clean the data, I train the model, I write the production code, deploy to production, write the monitoring, make sure that all the business KPIs are measured well, and then get feedback that if my model is working or not. Sometimes we have to do another round of training. So we really have to take care of the entire pipeline, not just the fun machine learning part.
Right, and it sounds like one of the most important things to keep in mind, also, especially for those that aren't familiar with machine learning or data science, as in the ins and outs of it. At the end, it's the connection to the business purpose, right? And it's the connection to the KPIs of the company. And you're not just somebody who's sitting down and writing math equations. You're actually the one who's receiving the raw data. You have to clean it. You have to fine tune it to your business needs. And if you don't understand the business needs, you might create a nice model, but it's not going to do what the business needs it to do, right?
Exactly. For example, one of the reasons I really love working specifically in the fraud domain, and when I moved to Intuit, I was specifically looking for a position in this domain, is that I have a very rich background in cybersecurity and fraud. And I feel that the combination between business knowledge and domain knowledge and my technical capabilities drives better results than a person that's an amazing data scientist, knows machine learning well, but has no idea what the different fraud MOs are, why would people commit fraud, the different techniques. So I really feel that a strong business sense makes a great data scientist as opposed to just the technical aspects of the job.
So if you had to go back and to talk to Aviv, 5.5 years ago, that is now joining, let's say, PayPal, or is joining, her first data science role in a corporate, what did you learn over these last few years that is not trivial, but you're saying this is something that is key to my success as a data scientist?
So as we already talked about, I think I had no idea how important the connection with the business is. I was very fascinated by the math part, and at the beginning, I didn't really understand the product enough. So definitely get to know the product better. Intuit is all about customer obsession, and I think this is a really critical part for any job, but specifically for data scientists, and really understand what the company is all about, what the products are doing, why is my model necessary, and how it can drive impact. And also keep learning and take on different projects. Don't say no to opportunities, even if you don't really understand in the short term why they're beneficial for me or for the company. Everything I do as part of my job or in external volunteering work, everything all comes together. And sometimes 2 years later, I come back to a small project I did and I remember some algorithm I used, and the dots just click. So I would say just be diverse, take on everything, try to learn as much as you can, learn from people, from more experienced people. I think this is one of the things that allowed me to really advance quickly. I always found mentors and people to learn from, and it's much quicker to learn from successful people than to make all the mistakes on your own.
And before you touched on this a little bit, the growing trend of the advancing technologies that are making the job of the data scientist a little bit different. There's many more tools. The expectations are different these days. And so, share with me a little bit about where you think we're heading, as a workforce and as a data science vertical, right? And so what are the different tools that we're seeing emerge, and where do you think we're going to end up in terms of the data science experience and role?
So I feel that a major concern of people that talk to me about this domain is the fact that automatic machine learning, is gaining a lot of traction, and people feel that in 10 years, this profession is going to be redundant. I feel this is like a very major concern of people that are just now starting their studies and say, okay, I'm just going to enter the workforce within 5 years, for example. How many years will I even have to practice data science before this goes away? I actually feel that this is a misconception because maybe things are going to get easier, meaning training a model and deploying it is going to get easier. There's many startups, a lot of them in Israel, by the way, that handle the model monitoring, which in the past was very cumbersome. Today, there's a lot of software, different SaaS that enable you to just buy a small piece of software and get automatic model monitoring. So things are easier, but everything is in the perimeter of the job, meaning business understanding and domain knowledge is not something that you can train a AutoML algorithm to just know. Feature engineering, even in again, maybe some of our audience isn't very familiar with deep learning. For example, when deep learning emerged and started entering the industry, a lot of the conversations were around, is feature engineering going to be redundant? Because deep learning models are much stronger than the traditional tree-based models. And people thought that we would just be able to take raw data, throw them on a deep learning model, and get amazing results. And practice shows that this really isn't the case, meaning you still need a data scientist that's proficient in cleaning the data, creating features, tuning the model, and also the human connection, meaning I work very closely with the business and with developers. And at the end, everything is all around people. Like you can't just have an algorithm that sets expectations or negotiates. And I really feel that these parts are here to stay. So well-versed data scientists that know how to handle the business as well as the technical part, I feel they're going to still have their jobs in 10, 15 years. But hopefully things will get faster and easier. And I feel that really the velocity of the models we're able to deploy has increased. If in the past it would take me 6 months to create a new model, today maybe I can do it in 2 months. Maybe in 5 years, I'll be able to do it in 2 weeks. So I feel the trend is actually going to help the data scientists and not really put us out of our jobs.
And so one of the key takeaways that I'm taking away from this is this idea that, while technical skills are going to be more democratized because a lot of the things that we now have, that we need intellectual property in terms of knowledge in order to do, they're going to be democratized by tools like TensorFlow, et cetera, and AutoML. But this connection to the business unit is something, and obviously all of that granted that, the really deep stuff, the really, hardcore deep learning, complicated models, they're probably not going to be in AutoML, and we're going to need those functions in the company. But for the average use cases, where this business connection is going to be the key, and I think that's a pretty important takeaway from here as well. And Aviv, I really want to thank you for coming here, and I want to spend the last few minutes going to talk a little bit more about you. And I'd like to start by going back to your childhood and asking what really fascinated you as a kid.
So maybe it's not surprising, as I ended up as a data scientist, but I loved math ever since I could remember myself. It was my favorite subject at school. I looked forward to doing homework in math, and I think it was one of my greatest realizations is that the world is so vast. Meaning, every year we would learn a new subject, a new subdomain, and the fact that knowledge is endless, and I can just keep on learning and think about new solutions, solving riddles. I think this really fascinated me, and eventually it led me to the career I chose.
Amazing. And what is inspiring you today?
So today, actually, I'm interested, of course, in technology and algorithms, but I would say that what really inspires me is the sense of community. I'm part of a few communities, both data science communities, female technologist communities. As I said before, I'm a mentor and mentee. And I think this is one of the things that really, the networking, the mutual help, it really pushed me. I started talking at conferences. Really, I would say this is something I would never have tried without the push of these strong communities. And this is what really inspires me in my day-to-day.
I love it. By the way, regarding your love for math, I'm trying to imagine, in elementary school, you're going and you're studying math. What did you find so beautiful about it that just got you so involved with it?
I think Two things. One is that it's the only subject I felt that I was really creating something. In other subjects at school, you just learn. You're passive. You learn social studies. You learn science. You learn history. You just like you have knowledge that's just thrown at you, and you're expected to memorize or understand. But math for me is something that you really can create with. I can create new problems and solve them. I can think of new things. So that's really what inspired me. The fact that it's very productive and it evolves. It's not just something you have to like understand, memorize, and go on to the next thing.
That makes a lot of sense. And the last question that I have for you is 3 words you would use to describe yourself.
So first, I'm a data scientist, of course. The second thing that may surprise a lot of people is that I'm a pastry chef. I studied for 1 year in parallel to my full-time work as a data scientist. So I'm a fully trained professional pastry chef and mentor. I think I spend most of my non-work hours mentoring people, and this has become really a strong part of my personality.
Aviv, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. This was wonderful and inspiring, and I learned a lot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.